Hi everyone, Dana here. Hope you guys are doing well. Today we are going to be making homemade Play-Doh. There's also going to be an optional writing component. But first things first, we always have to ask ourselves, why are we making Play-Doh in the first place? So making Play-Doh challenges a lot of really good skills. The first skill that comes to mind is sequencing. So sequencing is the ability to complete a task from start to finish in the correct order. So sequencing is super important to complete routines, to complete our homework the correct way, for a lot of good things. The next skill that we're challenging are fine motor skills and our hand strength. When our kids are making the Play-Doh, they're kneading together flour and salt and water, and they're having to squish and squeeze that Play-Doh. So that's really incorporating a lot of good hand strengthening. The next skill that we're targeting is sensory. So for a lot of our kiddos, especially our younger kiddos, this will be a totally new sensory experience. Flour, salt, and water feels kind of funny when you mix it together. So a really cool way to explore our world and gain new experience that way. And then another reason we're doing this activity is because, especially if you're doing the writing component, it's going to challenge our visual motor system. So the ability of our eyes and our hands to communicate. So visual motor skills really come into play when we're copying things, when we're copying words or when we're copying drawings or shapes. And then last but not least, the most important reason we're making Play-Doh is because kids love Play-Doh and they love making things. So it's going to be super, super, super fun. So let's go ahead and get started. If you're going to do the writing component, I have 3 rules for you. The first rule is I want nice big finger spaces between every word. Parents, if our kids don't want to use our finger as a spacer, you can give them a popsicle stick, you can give them another pencil and use that as a spacer. If you have stickers, you can have them put stickers between every space. They can draw little stars or hearts in each space, but spacing is super important. It really helps our overall legibility. The next thing I want us to remember is good letter sizing. So our tall letters like letter T or letter L, I want them to be really tall. I want them to be significantly taller than our short letters like O or A. If you're using tri-lines, this is perfect. I want our tall letters to touch the top. I want our short letters to touch the middle dotted line. And we also have our hanging letters that have a tail that go beneath the line. And then the last thing I really want us to take note of, the last rule, the last writing rule, is having baseline orientation. So I don't want any floating letters. I want all of our letters to sit on the ground. So parents, feel free to highlight that bottom line to really provide your kids with a visual cue to help them with that baseline adherence. So let's go ahead. Let's get started with that writing component. So now that you guys are finished writing down all the steps, it's time to actually make the Play-Doh. Play-Doh. Parents, see if your kids can remember all the steps. If not, no big deal. They can reference the directions that they just wrote down. And you can be as hands-on or as hands-off as you want to be, depending on how messy you want the kitchen to be. So let's go ahead and get started. So step 1, I'm going to grab my 1 cup and I'm going to scoop 1 cup of flour into my bowl. Having your kids practice this is awesome. It's good preparation, scooping for when they become chefs later in life. So I'm going to dump my 1 cup of flour into the bowl. All right. After I do my 1 cup of flour, I'm going to remember the next step, or I'm going to reference the directions that I just wrote down. So the next step is we have 1/2 cup of salt. So I'm going to grab my salt, or I'm going to have my child grab the salt and pour it again into the measuring cup, working on those functional skills, pouring and scooping. This is an example of bilateral coordination too, because I'm coordinating the movements of both of my hands. So 1/2 cup salt goes into my big bowl. And now we're on the last step. Last step is 1/2 cup of water into the bowl. So I'm pouring my water into the bowl. Okay. So now we get our spoon out and we start mixing. You guys can mix with your hands, really cool sensory experience. Otherwise, you can use a spoon. And as the flour and salt kind of coagulates with the water, you'll feel some resistance. This is a good hand strengthening as well as arm strengthening, shoulder strengthening activity. And once it coagulates a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and put my hands in. Get my hands dirty and start squishing the Play-Doh together. So I'm kneading, I'm squeezing it. If you guys have food coloring, now would be the time to put a drop in. Unfortunately, I don't have any food coloring, so I can't do that. And voila, now we have some homemade Play-Doh. If you have a student at home that likes to mouth or eat some materials that you guys have at home, this is actually the perfect solution, because if they eat this Play-Doh, they're really just eating flour and salt. So there you have it, homemade Play-Doh. I hope you guys had fun, and I will see you all next time. Bye.